So perhaps as an Asian kid, one of the most common things I've heard is that as long as I worked hard, everything would just fall into place. I believed in this from a very young age. I would set a goal and then work relentlessly, putting in all my time, effort, and focus to get there. And I won't deny it. This definitely got me places, to new unimaginable heights, and fueled my ever growing ambition. But as I reached out to more opportunities, to more competitive stages, I realized that hard work may not always be the answer. So before I unpack the story, let me give you a bit of context. One of my biggest extracurricular passions is Motto United Nations, MUN for short. And you might have heard of it, but just in case if you're unfamiliar, it's basically a high stakes, high speed diplomatic role play where students get to embody countries or characters in solving real world problems. Or sometimes maybe not so real problems, because you can go from nuclear disarmament to alien invasions. But despite so, you would have to research, write, debate, and negotiate. And sometimes, depending on the committee you're in, it could be like a game of mafia, full of plotting, betrayal, and constantly struggling for power. It's intense, it's political, it's dramatic. And that's why I like it. So, at the end of the day, the chair would give out awards, the chair as in the chairman of the committee. And they would evaluate you in aspects such as your argument, your public speaking skills, your leadership skills. But it's very subjective. So the main task, if you want to win, is to impress the chair. So back into the scope of my story, I began doing MUN in my freshman year. And this is kind of late, okay? I've seen a lot of people starting in their middle school years. But by the time of the story, I was already 8 conferences deep in the MUN sauce. So I consider myself pretty experienced. And I've won a bunch of awards in the China MUN circuit. However, therefore, my next most natural step would be going to one of the most competitive and prestigious conferences in the world. Harvard, MUN, Boston. Yes, a big name, Harvard. You slap that on anything and people would come there. Okay, so Harvard, MUN, Boston would take place at the end of January in Boston, Massachusetts. Very obvious. And what else happened in January? Finals. So right after finals, right after all the stress, I had to sit myself down and begin locking in for this conference because I cared a lot about it, honestly. And abiding to that mentality I've always had of working hard, I decided that I would write 8,400 words of a document where I would kind of predict every single scenario that would happen in that committee. And then I also attended offline sessions of just prepping. And for someone who loves sleep but clearly can't get enough of it in a semester, I had to wake up at 7 a.m. in the morning in the middle of my winter vacation. So I'd expect it to pay off, right? Because to me, MUN was kind of like math. Yes, another very Asian thing. It's like a simple equation. If I input effort, then what comes out would be awards, right? If I did 100 hours of prep, I would naturally do better than someone who only did 10 hours. Because mathematically, it's a simple math problem this time. 100 is larger than 10 by 10 times. And this way, it made my effort measurable and my probability of winning like a bar on a chess game that would fluctuate according to how much I input. It made sense to me like that. It was logical. It was fair. But at the same time, it was rigid. So the day came. Harvard MUN officially started. My blood was boiling because everywhere in Boston, I could see people trying to collect other people and trying to get them to team up and get a head start. And under this competitive pressure, I felt compelled to do that, and the burden came upon my shoulders. So opening ceremony, the only moment that I could breathe, flew past in the blink of an eye. And the next thing I knew, I was standing in a committee room full of people from everywhere. And honestly, I couldn't quite imagine how their lives would have been in those countries. But for what I knew, I'd expect them to be a seasoned delegate just like me. And I had a high bar for this, okay? You had to have good speeches with specific solutions, a clear line of reasoning. That's what I expected. So the first session was very subtle. It was like going down an aisle in a grocery store, the same old, same old. People were coming together and thinking of solutions to solve the problem. So they listed out facts, statistics, and past policies that I've all came across in my own research. So I was like, I got this in the bag, right? Because I had a 38-page document to back me up on it. However, I was wrong. Because as time went on, the committee got more and more chaotic than anything I was ever trained for. And being someone who relies on prep a lot, that struck me. There were delegates laughing in the middle of the speech. There were alliances forming just because of a funny joke. And there were people who were there to just have fun. It was kind of like a clown fiesta, a clown party. And for someone who prepped a lot and expected all of the people to be top notch, just like me, it really hurt me. I denied them of their abilities, and I told myself, they're not that good. They can't be serious like this. I remember this one delegate. He was like, let us put bunnies on the communist flag because some other organization decided to hack into the system. And that would help us solve the entire issue. When this came out, I was like, whoa, I'm definitely winning this time because everything was ridiculous. But then I look to my right. I see the chair snickering, and he was clearly entertained by this idea. I found myself, and then the chair started encouraging more delegates to opt to more creative solutions like this. I found myself spiraling because delegates were going towards this person that had the most outrageous idea and trying to collaborate with him. Meanwhile, me on the other end, I have my feasible economic policies backed up with historical evidence, but nobody came to me and nobody wanted to collaborate with me. So, was I the problem? Was I wrong about what success had looked like? That night, I went back into my room, all sad and stuff. I didn't understand why I was getting sidelined and how this guy who was spewing out nonsense had all the attention. And then I reflected on myself, and the truth struck me like a storm. I went in the committee next day with a new idea of how I'm going to try. I stopped trying to impress, and I started trying to match their energy levels. Or now, as I call it, I started trying to match their freak. I opened myself up to unorthodox ideas. I cracked a joke. I loosened up. And something magical happened. For the first time, I was having fun. My brain was no longer on this tightrope that's about to break. I was, for the first time, not just performing, but connecting with people. I remember going to lunches, dinners with all these delegates. I remember playing post-committee games such as poker. And that replaced the time where I'd usually go hermit back into my room and do more research so I could get ahead. These 3 days of utopia passed, and inevitably the results came out. I wasn't surprised or particularly sad when I realized I didn't win anything, because in this process I've gained something so much more valuable than just an award on paper. I've gained new friends, but more importantly, I've gained a new outlook on life. And some may call this the Western mentality. I realized the core of passion was that you're supposed to have fun, and that's how it's supposed to go. And when you're living in the moment, you tend to gain so much more fulfillment and growth compared to when you're competing for the purpose of competing. Of course, I'm not denying or rejecting the initial idea of hard work pays off, because it's not that one is better than the other. It's that both are incomplete on their own. There is value to the Asian mentality, the drive, the discipline, the commitment to excellence. But at the same time, there's beauty to the Western one, the spontaneity, the enjoyment, and the celebration of creativity. So now I try to synthesize the two. I no longer go to conferences just so I can collect awards, but because I genuinely enjoy the topic, the people, and crafting an argument from scratch. I still prep, I still try hard, but I don't punish myself when my outcome does not match the effort I input. I look at the growth, and not what I want. So at the end of the day, I realized that I actually performed better after being myself. So if I had a chance to go back and talk to myself before HMB, I won't tell myself to like, oh, stop prepping. That 8,400 word document is just gonna sit in your backpack. No, I would tell them that you must train with rigor, but when you're in the moment, be in the moment. Thank you.